My dearest friend, I was so happy to have received your letter. It gives me great pleasure that you take such interest in my work. Therefore, I shall endeavour to indulge you further. Some time has passed since we were last in communications, so as you can imagine, quite a few things have come to light. You might recall in my previous letter to you my mentioning of one Jack the Ripper. They also go by such names as the Whitechapel Murderer and, more aptly, Leather Apron, due to one of the suspected wearing a leather apron. Since then, there have been a total of 5 victims. The description of one of the suspected gentlemen is as follows. Standing at roughly 5 feet 5 inches tall, he wears a close-fitting cap. His hair is black from what can be seen of it, and is closely clipped. He is broad in stature and has a small black moustache. The suspect is aged between 38 and 40, and is distinguishable via his leather apron, which he always wears, hence where he gets his nickname. His temperament is that of a more sinister nature, according to the women who describe him. His eyes are small and beady, yet glittering, always seeming to bear a sly grin, which is highly disturbing. Although he is a slipper maker by trade, his main business is blackmailing the poor, unsuspecting women of Whitechapel. The unnamed man moves around silently, probably due to the skills he possesses as a slipper maker. The press soon caught on to the department's suspicions, and frustratingly he went into hiding to avoid falling victim to a baying mob. Eventually, Sergeant William Thick caught on to his whereabouts and made an arrest. Under intense investigation, however, he provided solid alibis for the nights of the 2 most recent murders and is ruled out as a suspect. So far, there have been 5 victims that have been linked to the case. Their names are Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. These took place between the 31st of August and the 9th of November. Including these 5 women, there have been a series of 11 murders total from 1888 to the present year committed in Whitechapel and Spitalfields. The other 6 cases, however, were found to have no obvious link to Jack the Ripper. A copycat, perhaps. The murders all took place around weekends and public holidays, all within a short distance of each other as well. This indicates that the Ripper was in regular employment and lived locally. Some say he was thought to be a well-educated, upper-class man, possibly a doctor or an aristocrat who ventured into Whitechapel from a well-to-do area. These theories suggest the cultural perception of the medical profession is a feared one. Also, the mistrust of modern science and the exploitation of the poor by the rich. It is possible the Ripper is simply someone who has a lot of anger towards the world. I conducted some research and pulled together possible psychological profiles of the killer. One would be that he is in reality a poor, insane tradesman with homicidal tendencies, who was admitted to the Colney Hatch Lunatic Asylum in 1889 under the name David Cohen. He fits the psychological profile of Jack the Ripper remarkably well, and was admitted to the asylum just weeks after the event that led to the death of the final victim, Mary Jane Kelly. London physician Thomas Bond used autopsy results and crime scene evidence to make a rudimentary but masterfully informed predictions about Jack the Ripper's personality, behavioural characteristics, and lifestyle. After examining the available forensic evidence, he concluded that all 5 murders were no doubt committed by the same hand. He stated that the Ripper had no medical training or knowledge of anatomy. This directly opposed what law enforcement authorities had previously concluded, which was that the Ripper was either a physician or had medical training due to the nature of the attacks. Bond, however, stated that the evidence was not consistent with the training of a medical expert or even the technical knowledge of a butcher. In Thomas Bond's opinion, the suspect must have been a man of solitary habits, prone to episodes of a homicidal nature. Judging by the overview of the crime scenes, the Ripper was labelled as a disorganized killer. Significantly, disorganized crimes are not planned, and the criminal typically leaves careless, messy evidence, such as blood, fingerprints, and even strands of hair. There is also no attempt to conceal the corpse after the crime has been committed. Disorganized criminals are often categorized as mentally unstable or suffering in some way, perhaps from paranoid schizophrenia or general hysteria. They do not possess the basic social skills to function in society, which leads them to remain on the outskirts of society. During his time in the asylum, David Cohen exhibited erratic, violent tendencies and had to be restrained at all times. He remained in a state of severe unrest, and all attempts to communicate with him failed due to him refusing to cooperate. Although a lot of arrows point to David potentially being Jack the Ripper, there is sadly no concrete way to prove it, as in 1889 he died in the asylum. There is significant evidence that he is the closest suspect we have ever had, and the cases by the same nature ceased to continue after his passing. I would love to know your thoughts and get a second opinion. It always helps to get another perspective on things. I am pleased to hear that you are doing okay, despite the circumstances. Often in life we come across rough patches, and not knowing how long they're going to last may seem daunting. But it's knowing that ultimately change always happens, and not to dwell for too long. I look forward to your next letter as always. It gives me great comfort, and it truly brightens my days. Take care, and wishing you the best. Love, your faithful friend. Wonderful, you're here. Thank you so much for coming. If you'd just like to take a seat. I'll be with you shortly. I'm just finishing up typing some notes. Very pleased to meet you. Thank you again for contacting me. I understand you have a rather peculiar case for me. Right. I was certainly intrigued by the look of your letter. And how long ago did the event occur? Right. Very recent. And what is the nature of this? Okay, so your friend. Right. I hope you don't mind if I take some notes while we discuss the case. Wonderful. So I understand that your unfortunate friend's body was found at his manor in Dartmoor. Yes, the case is a rather peculiar one, for sure. And he apparently died from a suspected heart attack. Right. Can you tell me anything about his facial expressions or the way the body was when you found it? Right. His face was frozen in fear. That is rather peculiar. Something must have really scared him. Okay. It's really interesting. And can you tell me anything about how the body was positioned? Right. Okay. Could you tell me anything interesting about the surrounding area? Anything unusual at all? The footprints of a gigantic hound, you say? Okay. We endeavour to keep an open mind here. And if you were to hazard a guess, what size would you say you would compare the footprints to? Right. Okay, so we're talking much larger than a grown man's footprint. Okay. I'm sure you'll believe me when I tell you that we get quite a lot of unusual cases come through the door. This is not the most unusual, but certainly is interesting. Usually, no matter how unusual the cases may seem, there is always some truth to them, regardless of whether somebody thinks they saw something or if it is actually there. There are a lot of explanations for what this could be, but it may well be a gigantic hound. I'll have to find out. So, in your letter, you mentioned there is a supposed curse in the Baskerville family. Is that correct? Right. And I remember you stated that it began with Hugo Baskerville when he caused the death of a maiden and was struck down by a gigantic hound. Some would say that's instant karma. Say we follow the logic of the curse. What happens next? So each of the Baskervilles were continuously struck down afterwards. Right. And who is next in line? Sir Henry Baskerville. So the first thing we need to do is we need to secure the area of the manor and make sure nobody can go in or out. I will contact Scotland Yard and have them send out officers to patrol the area and also the general perimeter of the moors, just in case. I think that will be the best thing to do next. And my assistant and I will also go along and search the area for clues or any strange things that we may find that help us in the case. Okay. Can you give me any more information about the manor or the surrounding area? Okay, so there's a prison nearby and the convicts escaped. That certainly spices things up a bit. Okay, right. And the ground around the manor? So there's marshes and quicksand. Very interesting. Okay, we'll be sure to avoid that. And it's very important to us and the investigation. Yeah, you never know what you might find in the woods, especially. There's woods surrounding the manor. Right. Okay. I think it best that we do a search in the daytime and also in the evening as well. And have you yourself ever heard or seen anything suspicious? Either before the attack or after the attack? Okay, so you have heard growls, and they were coming from the woods. Right, and the body was discovered near the woods, on the grounds of the manor, is that right? Right, next to the woods on the grounds. Okay. And did you see anything suspicious at all? Suspicious looking shadows. Right. Were they larger than a human? Right, okay. Sometimes at night our sight can play tricks on us, but sometimes we do actually see what's in front of us. So I guess we'll have to find out for ourselves. What I will do is continue making notes of our meeting and I will contact you in the morning just before I set off, and I will meet you at the manor with my assistant. And then we will go on a hunt and look for some clues or anything we may find. Okay? So for now, I will bid you a pleasant evening. And thank you so much for coming again today. It's very interesting. And hopefully, we will shed some light on what happened to your friend. Okay, thank you very much.